Okay, yeah, we didn't quite anticipate having this many maintainers, so bear with us. But yeah, we're ready for the fireside chat. So if you have a question, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, and we will bring a mic over to you and allow you to ask questions from the maintainers. Is there anyone in the room that has one? Oh, thank you. You're saving us here.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I can hear myself. All right, Sunny here. I've been using Svelte for 2 years and slowly getting more into the community. My question is, for people like me and people that are newer to the community, how can we contribute to help foster growth?
Oh, that's a great question. Who wants to answer?
I think in general, contributing to an open source project is actually very simple. The first thing that you can do is you can just talk about it, and that is already contributing. Living in the issue tracker is also another way. There are a lot of people that are just there, and they just know about Svelte enough to signal when there is an issue that is not an issue, help solve problems. That is also another way of contributing. In Discord, we have an enormous community that is asking questions, but also a lot of people that are answering questions. Obviously, after that, the next step, I think it's another very good way, in my opinion, is writing failing tests. Because if you know about, okay, this is, it's an issue, and you can open a PR just with the failing test, and then someone else can fix it. Writing good reproductions is also a good way of contributing, because sometimes people just plop the whole GitHub repo in it, and you have to find the issue in another 200 cogs. So writing a good reproduction is a way of contributing, and obviously, the more you do it, the more you get familiar with the code base. And once you are familiar with the code base, you can actually start contributing with actual code. So you can find small issue that, oh, I know how to fix this. And you can just go there and get help in the PR discussions. Because obviously, if you write something and it's missing a test, we're going to say, hey, you can write a test for this and stuff like that. So this is, I think, the crescendo of the contribution.
Yeah, just for a real-world use case. The way I became a maintainer, actually, back in the day, it was without a single line of code. What I did, I made it my mission for some reason, I don't know. I went on the GitHub repository, and I just basically responded to every single issue I could, saying, yes, that's a bug. Here's how you reproduce it. No, that's not a bug. Here's how you use it, et cetera, et cetera. And because the volume of bugs that comes in is enormous, so if you don't want to write code or you feel intimidated by the code base, which is fair, respond to issues, make sure they're useful answers, and try and get things, cleaned up.
And the world definitely needs more Anthonys. So if you are inclined to do such things, then please do. But just to expound on the first point that Paolo made, it's so much more than code. Using an open source project counts as contributing. Being in the Discord and helping other people who might be less experienced than you and probably have some of the same questions that you had when you were at their stage of the learning process, that is also contributing. Fixing typos in the docs, super useful contributions. Speaking at meetups and things like that, also incredibly helpful. So the code is obviously important, but it's only one component, and there are so many ways to contribute that you can find the way that speaks to your strengths and your passions and run with it.
Such a great answer. I feel like that's the epitome of it, and you are all actually contributing just being here. And this is what Svelte's about, like Rich said in his talk. This is great.
Why do derived and effect runes not have an explicit dependency array like useEffect has in React?
Because you shouldn't need to care about your dependencies. People sometimes say, I want to be able to rerun some code when this specific thing changes, and the answer is always, why? Unless you're actually using it in such a way that the dependency will be tracked automatically, what are you doing? And every time we've investigated one of these cases, almost every time, there are very rare exceptions, but almost every time, it's been a case of something that could have been done in a more idiomatic way. So if you are like finding yourself reaching for a dependency array, then just try and think if there's maybe you're doing something, like you're cutting against the grain a little bit. I don't know, maybe other maintainers have a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like if you start thinking about dependencies that way, you are creating like a separate graph of things you have to care about, and it's not really documented anywhere. So it gets really hard to understand and follow this. So if you forget to update the array when you change your code, then suddenly something breaks, and you might not even realize because it's 2 components away. There is a tool you can use if you really want that level of control. It's called untrack. Find it in the documentation and use it if you have to, but like think really, really hard if you have to.
And if you find yourself wondering why is it updating, we have $inspect.trace, which you can put inside the effect rune, and it will tell you why the effect rerun, which signal triggered that.
There's a lot of things that are built into Svelte that make it so nice that we can enhance or use in the way that we want, but they force us to do the right things in most cases. I think I saw a hand up over here. Thomas?
Okay, so my question is, you mentioned about how Svelte, you wanted it to be like a framework that works for everything, and for some things, it's the framework that give us these tools like async and whatnot, and for others, it's the library stuff. Like you mentioned, you wanted to do an AI app, so there's Svelte, which kind of does an awesome job of it. So what should be a job of the framework, and what should be a job of the ecosystem?
Okay, what should be a job of the framework and what should be a job of the ecosystem? Where's that separation?
I feel like there's no, at least for me, there's no definitive answer. And like, it's always shifting and moving. Some things that are now part of a library maybe become so ubiquitous, so table stakes, that at some point we say, like, we need to incorporate that into the framework itself. From a pure standpoint, I would say everything you can't do without hacking into internals, but you really need it, that should be our job, and the rest is deferred to the ecosystem. But as I said, like, more and more things become table stakes, or you just want the good experience, the out-of-the-box experience, not like playing library search all the time. And so there's definitely deviations from that, but yeah, it depends.
Yeah, just want to add to that again, because I was having a chat with Rich this morning after the first talk, and I want to almost make your question even broader. What is the job of Svelte Kit, the framework? What is the job of the language Svelte? What is the job of Vite? Because a lot of the stuff discussed around Sentry, I thought, well, that could live in Svelte Kit, and Svelte Kit would benefit, and that's wonderful, but what if it was in Vite? What if that sort of hook into the imports model was actually inside Vite? Then everyone gets it. At least, that benefits the wider community. It benefits Nuxt and Solid and everything else.
I also think that it's not actually a question of what's technically possible. What's it's really an effort impact trade-off from our point of view, because the more surface area there is, the more integrations there are. Those integrations change. It becomes this kind of cascading management job. And if something is really valuable, or 75% of our users want to do it, and I guess something like, oh, should we do, there are technical reasons why you'd have transitions in a framework, but part of it is it's just such a common use case. So if there are very, very common use cases, they're high impact, they're relatively modest in terms of maintenance, then maybe it goes into core, right? But for those kind of edge cases, it's just important to have, like Simon says, to make sure it's possible to do the things that you want to do while not kind of inheriting an enormous maintenance burden.
As a user of Svelte, I want all of the things. I would love it if the database was part of it, but there are tangible, practical reasons why you don't want to do that. Our opinion as a community about what the best way to do auth and data and stuff like that has evolved a lot over the last few years. And so there is a risk that if you do too much, if you take on too much, then you will sort of calcify best practices that 2 years later are very much not best practices. And I've seen that happen to a few projects, and it's something that we need to try and avoid.
All right, we're going to use this mic now as well. So before that, I just also want to tell the remote viewers that if you're on the Svelte Summit website and watching, you need to click the YouTube link so you can actually see the comments and so I can see what you want to ask. Yeah.
Can we have everyone, actually, I should have done this at the beginning, have like a short intro and kind of what you work on in the system from the guys before we think about your questions?
So my name's Anthony Mackenzie Jones. I'm known as Anthony where I can get it online and where I can't, some other random name. I work on a site called Beyond, which is event ticketing. It's not just mazes, as we've been at. It's event ticketing, and it is all written in Svelte Kit, and to an extent, Sapper as well.
I am Pete. I am a penguin on the internet. I don't do anything on Svelte anymore, really. I'm just hanging around for the perks. I work at Hugging Face on open source library Radio, if you're familiar, which is all in Svelte and stuff.
I'm Rich. I have the extraordinary privilege of working on Svelte full-time at Vercel, which in practice means I mostly do what Simon tells me.
Simon says.
I'm Paolo. I work at Main Matter, which is also one of the co-organizers of the event. And we are a consultancy, so I actually work with Svelte. Currently, I'm actually working on Svelte, on the custom renderer API, but yeah.
Hi, I'm T Meng. I'm from Malaysia, and I work in an agency that helps other companies, and we specialize in React, but half of my time I'm working with my colleagues to help those companies, and the other half I work on Svelte Kit.
And by the way, that is possible thanks to our Open Collective sponsors, because we can pay him through that. I, on the other hand, I'm paid by Vercel, so I'm also a full-time Svelte maintainer. I'm Simon. You know me maybe by Dum-de-Dum on the internet. And yeah, sometimes I try Rich to tell what to do, but sometimes he listens, sometimes he doesn't. No, yeah, it's a great honor to work on it, and yeah, I do basically everything and nothing. I started out contributing to the VS Code extension way back then, and since then I worked on Svelte Kit, Svelte. So yeah, we're still a small team, so everybody's got to do everything to some extent.
I'm Manuel. I'm currently working together with Ben and Adrian on the SV CLI, and yeah, we have been maintaining the integrations, the add-ons with like Tailwind and Lucia and whatever else is in there currently.
Yeah, I'm Dominic, and I'm the author of Beat Plugin Svelte, which like caused a lot of this. But I can't take full credit. There's a lot of people that helped me. Rixo, who can't be here, unfortunately. I want to disagree with Simon. I disagree with people a lot, so I apologize, but we are not a small team anymore. Like, there's 8 of us on this stage, and it barely fits. Like, I'm falling down. But there can never be enough. So the earlier question about contributing, find your passion and start. Like, mine was performance and hot module reloading, and that brought me onto this stage. There's no reason why any one of you can't sit here like next year. So get going.
Thank you. Do we have another question in the audience? We've got a couple. I'll let you choose.
I'll go here. Sorry. In your talk, I remember that said something about rethinking Svelte Kit or making improvements to it. I'm guessing this is really way down the line, but can you share, any of you, are you going to be any paradigm changes, any revolutions that are going to Svelte Kit, or is it more tweaks? Is it allowed to can you explain what ideas you have for Svelte Kit?
I have to be very careful what I say because you know, I don't want to make any promises that we can't keep, first of all, but I also don't want to suggest that we're going to make changes that like people will be like, why would I invest time building a Svelte Kit app when they're just going to change everything? We don't intend to just change everything. Stability is essential in software development, and if we were to just change our minds every year about the right way to do things, that would help no one. But you know, all of the things that people don't like about Svelte Kit do kind of have all of these fairly common root causes, and what we're starting to see as the async work matures is that the possibilities, like the adjacent possibilities, are starting to become more visible and more in focus. And so things like, you know, is a load function that is like next to your root components the right way to get data into your application? Maybe it is, like it's a convenient place to do authentication and erroring and redirecting and stuff, as well as your data loading, but maybe it doesn't. Like there's so many times when I have a component like right down here on the page that I need to fetch data for it up here and then just like pass it down, and things like that, and it's kind of weird, and especially if you're doing something that's CMS based and like the component might be visible if something is in the CMS, but maybe it isn't, and like you need to recreate the structure of your page inside your load function so that you know what data to load. Like, all of that stuff is painful, and I've seen large teams working on large apps really struggle with that. And so, you know, it could be the case that we want to start moving people away from using load functions in favor of having things at the level of components, but you know, I don't want to say that we're going to do that because that'll scare people, and we might not. But that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Some of the stuff that I'm more excited about as a maintainer of this stuff is the amount of code that is in Svelte Kit to handle like all of the stuff that needs to be built on top of Svelte is quite thick. It's quite a large monolithic project, and with some of these primitives, we could just make that smaller and then potentially start to break it apart into modular parts, because people sometimes say, you know, why can't I bring my own router? Why can't I, you know, bring my own this, that, and the other? And if we were to do that, if we were to decompose it from a monolith into these independent modules with the like clearly defined contracts, then we could do that. But the first priority is having a thing that lets you ship things very quickly and having like an opinionated set of defaults that get you out of the gate quickly. And all of the other stuff, the modularity and so on, has to be in service of that and not the other way around.
Are you turning Svelte Kit into a library and not a framework?
I mean, it's already just a beat.
I guess that's true. Fair.
It's a labyrinth.
Hi, I'm Ilya. I have a very short question. Can we keep both snippets and slots?
He's like, no, I'm not even going back.
I blanked, sorry. I'm tired, okay.
I thought we were just skipping the question because it's like...
No.
You could have just said that a bit louder.
We wanted you to run up here.
What?
We wanted you to run up
Yeah,
here.
apparently. All right. Yeah.
How are we on time, by the way?
We can go.
Good, okay.
Two or three more?
Did you have someone back there in mind? Somebody with a question?
No, I was just going to stand there.
Oh, okay.
Over there.
Got a few.
Hi. So one of the talks that I found most interesting conceptually was using other server frameworks with Svelte. And sort of going back to a question earlier, would allowing people to incrementally adopt Svelte with the existing infrastructure that a company has, would that be something that the team would be interested in helping us to do? Or is that something that the community is expected to provide ourselves? Because I think, you know, all of us here are slightly, we're a very optimistic crowd, and that we would love to use Svelte, but it's a very hard sell if we're asking our companies to sort of bin functioning code. So that's my question.
So I think the biggest thing you as a community can help us out with here is, you saw that this is possible via using the render function and so on. So you can cram Svelte Kit into pretty much anything if you really want to. And I think most people, A, don't realize that, and B, don't know how to do it. So once you figured it out for yourself how to do it, post about it. Like, write a blog about it, write a guide, do YouTube video, talk about it on meetups, whatever. We can pick that up and we can amplify that. And I feel like that would help us out greatly. Sometimes I have this from time to time, and like on my big to-do list is to at some point have like a guide section on the Svelte side. And stuff like that could go into there. Or maybe also into the Svelte Society website, which is, by the way, about to be relaunched. Kev, I hope I spoiled it. Okay, not giving away too much, but yeah, you can post it there as well. So yeah, I think that is the most important bit here. It is possible. If not, then come to us and we will try to make it possible. And once you succeeded, talk about it.
Awesome.
So there are actually a few projects that make this today. Like, if you check at the past hackathons, there's one Django x Svelte and another one with Elixir, I think. And I think some Laravel people use it as well. But it's kind of messy, and using the Svelte render primitive in other languages like makes you jump back and forth. And I agree that we might need to go all in on this, making Svelte Kit more composable, so that you don't have to like take the primitives and do everything yourself, but take like some parts of Svelte Kit and use them. Because Svelte Kit is like really greedy and expects to be an application. But if Svelte Kit is not the application, it doesn't really work. There is technically embedded mode, so it works for some specific cases. But right now, Svelte Kit is really like for an app. So if you have wishes, come talk with us, like asking questions and formulating, this is what I want to do, how can it be done, is another great way to contribute. So please do.
So I've, excuse me, I've done this a few times with various frameworks and stuff, had these old, decades-old kind of code bases, and I was saying somewhere before, I hate the culture of like shit-talking legacy code, because that pays the bills. It's like worked in service of the company for a long time, but you still want to update things. And I think that the problem with coming up with generic solutions is every company's needs are so different. And and often like your architecture really needs to kind of reflect your company's structure and stuff, and even when you start to take patterns that are pretty well evolved at this point, like I've done a lot of micro front-end work in the past, like every org's implementation of a relatively standardized pattern is slightly different. And we face the same problem here. Like how exactly, you want to, which bits of Svelte and Svelte Kit do you actually need? Which bits do you need to defer to your existing system? How are you going to integrate them? Those are really kind of difficult to solve generically. But I do think there's like this gap between like, let's just not get involved and leave it to you sort of a thing, and building all that support into the tool itself. So I think having a series of patterns that, ideally success stories to go along with those patterns to show not just, we saw from Bert's talk, it's as much like a people and a culture problem as it is a technical problem. So showing like, how do you go from dreaming about Svelte in your legacy code base to actually kind of taking those first steps, and how do you kind of actually scale up those first steps as well? So there's a kind of there's a process / kind of pattern situation that it would be really good to get some real world examples. So like examples like Bert's are fantastic because they highlight, the how and the why and so on. So if more people try it or do it and feedback and tell us how they did that, we could maybe start to provide some semi-official kind of patterns and guidance on how you might approach that problem.
Yeah, I'm leaving this conference with a lot of homework, among other things, and I was kind of cringing watching Safet's talk yesterday, because he made it clear just what a bad job we've done of showing how to do this stuff. And you know, when you look at the NPM download counts, there are way more people using Svelte without Svelte Kit than with Svelte Kit. So it is clearly a priority and something that we definitely want to get better at.
Awesome answers. We've got time for about 2 more questions.
Yeah, one online. So this is from Fedor. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but here's the question. We're using Svelte 5 and loving it. One of our biggest excitements, ability to use the reactive primitive with classes, it's amazing. However, there's one big pain point in it. Unknown signals/reactions. There's a couple of open issues currently when reactivity breaks, and we also hit a similar problem in production. It could be handled somewhat by using effect root. However, remembering to do so is tricky. Maybe it's possible to brainstorm some solution to the problem, somehow utilize new syntax.
Anyone have any?
What are your thoughts?
So this is a really complex question that's probably better asked on the Svelte Kit Discord, so we can have a longer discussion about it. I'm sorry I can't bring more on the top of my head, but I want to remember effect root is something you don't have to reach for often, so I don't think you should lean into this for your problem, but we rather need to understand why your effects break and find more patterns and guidance to help you write your code that it doesn't.
Okay. One more? Over here.
To pick up on the questions, a few questions before about the line of responsibility between the maintainers and userland, what would you say is the single biggest piece of functionality or library that you think is missing from userland that we could provide?
They're discussing it amongst themselves. They need a moment.
So I'm gonna answer this by not answering it, but because I don't know a single biggest thing that is missing. I feel like the single biggest thing missing that's different for everyone, and so I feel like it's probably more in the sense of see what's missing for your use case right now, see if something's out there, either help out, make it more robust, or build it. So for example, I have been in collaboration with James, been doing an integration for TanStack form. There's a Svelte version for it now. And so people have asked for it and been like, hey, why do the other frameworks have an integration and Svelte hasn't one yet? And so we built that. And I think it's just things like that where, so that in the end, whenever someone asks, is there a Svelte version of it? You can be like, yes, here we go. And I feel like that is collectively the thing and not one.
I actually did think of something. We're not very good at AI stuff. I say that as I sit next to someone who works at Hugging Face, and we have been talking about this stuff a lot this week. There is a gap if you're using tools like Claude Code and Windsurf and all of these things. Then getting it to output good Svelte code is hard. Getting it to output good Svelte 5 code is extremely hard. And that is partly just a limitation of the way that these models work. They lean on their training data very heavily. But there are things that you can do to give it up-to-date context and information. And most of us, Pete accepted, are not experts in this. And I think it would be cool to see more experiments from the community on what the right way, what successful recipes are there that can help people who are choosing to use LLMs in their development to work with Svelte 5.
I guess since it's come up, I think I mean, the AI is a massive piece, and on my team, we have a real mix of experiences, and we use these tools heavily. You know, they massively increase our productivity, and so we actually, we are not able really to migrate to Svelte 5 until they are present. Like, because I can't expect the whole team to just like, you know, who aren't front-end developers by trade to just immediately be just as productive as before. So it's actually really important for me personally and for our team. But it is a complicated piece, and it's complicated in the sense that it's technically complicated, but it's also ethically complicated. And you know, I know because we've been discussing it so much this week, and I was thinking about it a bit more today. It's like, you know, we need to make sure that it's if we do something, that it's done in the right way. That, you know, like there's a lot of talk around consent. There's a lot of talk around, you know, if you decided to fine-tune, if you decided to RAG, it's like you can't just go scouring the internet for every piece of code unless you're, you know, a VC-backed AI company. But you know, you can't like be in an ethically sound way just scour everyone's code, steal, you know, take all the Discord messages, take all your code, and train new models on it, right? Like that is not a, you know, we've been talking about the community like all you know, the past 2 days. That's not a very kind of community-focused, human-centered approach. So we also need to be careful that it's done in kind of the right way, consistent with our values. We've been very kind of clear about our kind of ethical and sometimes moral positions on various subjects over the years. You know, it'd be very convenient for us to forget them now. So we do need to make sure we do it in collaboration with the community in a way that is kind of as ethically sound and consensual as possible.
Good answer. Good job. Can we get a round of applause for all the maintainers that we have here, not only on stage, but also the ones behind the scenes and that aren't here and can't be here with us? Everybody just big round of applause. Thank you. All right, we want to go ahead and wrap up. We good? Yeah. Okay, thank you guys. You can head off and we'll...
Well, we still have closing remarks,
yeah,
right?
we have closing remarks, so we'll say a few words.
So
you got it?
Do you want to end it first? Or?
No.
No.
You're good.
You lost your badge. That's been a common theme these 2 days. People ripping their badges off the lanyard. Sorry about that. All right. It's the end of day 2. I hope you all had a lot of fun. I know I had. If you have any feedback, come talk to me. I'd love to make this even better. But yeah, I mean, other than that, and also Simon kind of semi-spoiled the release of the new Svelte Society website. Although to be fair, I have talked about it before. So if you've been to the current Svelte Society website, you'll see it's quite outdated. The package search isn't all that good. So very soon, famous last words, we are launching the new Svelte Society website with like an updated search feature and all the good stuff, so you can actually find packages for your projects and stuff like that.